is Malecia Griffin, the trauma solver, and I want to welcome you to The Truth About Trauma, where we explore different avenues of trauma, how it impacts us, and what we can do collectively to heal. I'm a health coach that specializes in sexual trauma, and what many people don't realize is that when trauma bombards your life, it rewrites you and becomes a piece of your identity. So I want you to stick around and listen in as we dive into the truth about trauma. I'm excited about exploring these avenues of trauma with you, and I wanted to create a space where we could come collectively to talk about these issues, because trauma is often neglected simply because many people don't know how it is presented. And when you don't know how something is presented, very rarely will you try to challenge it, will you try to dissect it, or even understand it. And so that's what we see happening with trauma. On one end of the spectrum, we see people woefully neglecting it simply because they don't understand it or even how it plays a role in their life. And on the other end, we see people constantly bombarding one another with talks about I'm dealing with trauma, overcoming trauma, and don't really have a clue what trauma is. And so this is something that we're all going to dissect together. And so no matter where you are, if you are hearing this on Spotify or Anchor or Apple Podcasts, Samsung Podcasts, YouTube, Instagram, I want you to comment on these episodes going forward, because even though I may not see it, someone will see it. And the whole point of this, the whole purpose of this is to get this conversation moving so that we can all collectively heal from these things that have been trying to wear us down. And so there's a quote from my book, Year of She Arise, that really sticks with me, and it really summarizes how I feel about traumatic situations and the emotional baggage that we carry oftentimes because of hurtful things from pain from the past, and from wiring. And I say toxic cycles don't get to define you, but you can live a life void of the brokenness that has tried to plague you. And this quote is so important to me because oftentimes we get caught up in what was done to us, what happened to us, what we saw, or what we experienced. And we allow those mile markers to become monuments in our life. They become the defining thing that determines who we are, how we move, how we handle one another, how we think, how we eat, how we dress. It literally engulfs and takes over you. And so as we explore over the next few weeks, we are going to dive deep. And let me tell you something. These talks are not going to be limited or shallow or short. The episode may seem short, but you're likely going to leave with more questions about yourself, your family, your friendships, your alliances, purpose than answers. And it's not my job to give you all the answers, but I do know it is my responsibility and my purpose to spark meaningful and healthy dialogue about these things that we don't fully have understanding on and things that we've neglected. And so we're going to be exploring trauma in the mind, which is multidimensional. And that is such a broad context of trauma, but it dives into the area of your imagination, in your thoughts and your processes. And so it is a huge component to trauma that is often ignored because we tend to focus on telling people to change how they respond to things, not recognizing that certain things are just lodged in the mind that have to be reconstructed. And then we're going to discuss brain trauma. Trauma in the brain, which is the scientific wiring of your brain. Your brain literally secretes things, and it creates new cellular, how do I say this? The brain basically rewires itself, and the trauma and the things you've experienced and how you respond to them become habitual. So when you think about the process of addiction, for example, you will just automatically go do that thing. And when you tell yourself not to do that thing, you will find a challenge happening because the addiction has become a part of your identity. And so trauma in the brain is very important because there are certain areas that have to be challenged and rewired and reconditioned and recalibrated so that the response is not the same. And then we want to explore trauma in the heart, which is where everything is offloaded from. And lastly, we'll be talking about trauma in cultures and societies. And this deals with your generations, and it deals with your understanding of your upbringing, your neighborhood, and your DNA, and all these things. And so I'm just really excited to explore this. This is not scripted, as you can probably hear. And I don't know if many of them will be. And I will say this is the most passionate I have felt about a podcast. I've done several podcasts, and they've all kind of just been something I was doing because I knew I was supposed to be speaking, but I didn't really have the full understanding of what I was supposed to do. This podcast is my baby. This is where my heart is. This is what I know I was created to do. And so I'm excited about it and what's going to come out of it. So please subscribe wherever you are. Okay. For me, this is not about numbers, but it's about impact. It is about making a mark, making a dent in those areas that have tried to rob us of joy, steal our destinies, keep us from having meaningful relationships, healthy families. I really want us to challenge and shake up some things. Okay, so I thank you for joining me. This was very short and quaint, but I'm telling you now, we're going to go deep because I was created to be deep, okay? I'm just a deep person. I'm a thinker. And so we're going to dive deep in these talks. And I want you to make sure that you're ready. I want you to make sure that you're sharing this, and anything that sticks out to you, I want you to explore it on your own, okay? That means do your research, all right? So I will see you next week on the next episode of The Truth About Trauma. Hey, thanks for listening. Don't forget, if you have any comments, drop them in the chat, no matter where you're listening from. And also, be sure to check out the description and look at the many ways we can stay connected and how you can partner with this podcast. Thanks for tuning in. See you next time.